Why did the room fall quiet the moment she finished speaking? No one expected that from her. Not the calm voice, not the certainty, and certainly not the way her finger traced the valley on the screen, not like someone guessing, but like someone remembering. The commander stood with his arms folded, eyes sharp, jaw tight. He had spent his life listening to men who sounded confident, men who filled rooms with certainty. She did neither. She didn't raise her voice, didn't defend herself. She simply said, "That route will get them killed." A ripple moved through the briefing room, some disbelief, some irritation, a few smirks. She was small, younger than most of them. Her uniform carried no visible combat ribbons, logistics, planning, support, safe roles. The commander exhaled sharply. "You're asking me to bet 12 seals on a theory." "It's not a theory," she said. "It's terrain." That word again, terrain. She said it like it mattered more than rank. He gestured toward the map. "You've never even been in that valley." She didn't answer, not because she didn't have one, but because the truth didn't fit inside the room yet. They dismissed her suggestion within minutes. A direct assault, air support, overwhelming force, doctrine written by people who survived enough times to believe it always worked. She gathered her notes quietly and walked out before anyone could see her hands tremble. In the hallway, the air felt thinner, her breath shallow. She leaned her head against the cool concrete wall and closed her eyes, not to calm herself, but to steady the memories trying to break through. She could still hear it, the wind through that valley, the way sound traveled wrong there, how footsteps lied, how silence didn't mean safety. 12 seals were down there now, waiting, watching their clocks. And the people making decisions about them had never bled on that ground. She returned to her office and pulled up satellite imagery, her fingers moving with a familiarity that surprised even her. Elevation overlays, thermal drift, old erosion scars that didn't show on modern maps. She found it, the canyon. Still there, still narrow, still invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. She whispered the coordinates like a confession. Outside, helicopters lifted off. The plan she knew would fail was already in motion. And she sat alone, staring at a valley that had taken everything from her once and was about to demand more. What does it feel like when you realize you're watching history repeat itself? It wasn't panic. Not yet. It was that quiet tightening in her chest, the one she'd learned to recognize. The moment when patterns lined up too cleanly, when the enemy behaved exactly the way they were expected to behave. Because that was the trap. The radio crackled, casual updates at first, progress reports, confidence, the sound of men doing what they'd trained to do. Then the tone changed. Contact. Heavy contact. The word slammed into the operations center like a physical force. Red markers bloomed across the map, too many, too fast, in places that had been empty minutes earlier. "They let us in," someone whispered. She stood before she realized she'd moved. Western Ridge, elevated positions, interlocking fire, exactly where she'd said they would be. The commander barked orders, adjustments, withdrawal too late. The enemy wasn't reacting, they were executing. A kill box. Her mouth went dry as the radio filled with overlapping voices, wounded reports, vehicles disabled, panic threading through professionalism. And then the worst transmission of all. The SEAL team was cut off. 12 men, now isolated, surrounded by a battalion-strength force that knew the valley better than doctrine ever could. Silence settled over the room like a held breath. The commander turned slowly. Options. No one spoke. Maps were redrawn, routes evaluated. Each one collapsed under scrutiny, every approach exposed, every solution too slow. She stepped forward. "I have one." Every head turned, surprise, resistance, anger. "You had your chance," someone snapped. She didn't flinch. "This one doesn't care about rank." She moved to the screen, her voice steady but low. They're using a three-sided containment pattern. Heavy weapons here, here, and here. They expect air or armor. That's why those routes are death. And your solution? The commander asked, already bracing for disappointment. We don't attack the formation, she said. We remove its spine. She pointed to positions no one had marked, places that looked like nothing. Command post, observation node, rally point. If those disappear, the battalion fractures. And how do you know where they are? Someone demanded. She hesitated, just a fraction of a second. Because that's where I would put them. The room stilled. Drone feeds came online. She took the controls without asking. Her hands didn't search, they remembered. Targets appeared, one by one, confirmed, verified. Missiles launched. Precision, discipline, no wasted motion. The enemy didn't understand what was happening, only that something was tearing the order out of them. The SEAL team moved when she told them to, ran when she said run, trusted a voice they didn't know because it sounded like someone who knew the valley intimately. The canyon opened exactly where she promised. Extraction began. Relief rippled through the room. And then she froze. New contacts, reinforcements, hundreds. The trap hadn't failed. It had evolved. Have you ever felt the moment when survival demands more than skill? It demanded truth. The commander stared at the new threat matrix, his confidence draining. We're out of air support. She didn't look at him. I know. We're out of missiles. I know. We're out of time. That finally made her turn. No, she said quietly, we're out of excuses. She drew the map inward, zooming past current overlays, past approved data layers into something older. These positions, she said, they were built before, long before this mission. No one understood. They're still there, she continued. Rock Sanger's overwatch points, we can use them. That information is classified, someone protested. She didn't answer. Instead, she guided two sniper teams by memory alone, not coordinates, landmarks. A bent tree, a scar in the rock, a ridge that caught moonlight differently. The snipers arrived exactly where she said they would. Then someone finally accessed the file they shouldn't have been able to see. Her name appeared differently there. Different rank. Different unit. Declared KIA. The commander read it twice before looking up. Shadow 7, he said softly. The room changed. She didn't confirm it, didn't deny it. She just said focus. Shots rang out, not chaos, selection. 5 enemy leaders dropped in seconds. The blockade collapsed. The SEALs broke through. Extraction complete. Cheers erupted, but she stayed seated, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the valley that had taken her team years ago. She hadn't beaten it. She survived it again. Why do some victories feel heavier than defeat? After the dust settled, they lined up to apologize. She stopped them. Don't, she said, just remember next time. She declined promotions, deferred praise, asked only for one thing. A memorial. For 7 names, no one spoke anymore. Later that night, she stood alone before the stone wall, fingers brushing letters etched into permanence. I'm sorry, she whispered, I ran. The wind answered nothing. But she understood now. Survival wasn't permission to disappear. It was obligation. 3 weeks later, the call came. A new unit, a new shadow. The man responsible still hid in that valley, confident that ghosts stayed buried. She looked at the map once more. No, she said, they don't. She accepted command. Not for revenge. For closure. For the living. For the ones who never came home. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't argue. It doesn't demand belief. It waits, and when the moment comes, it acts. Why did the valley go quiet just before everything broke? Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the wrong kind, the kind that presses against the ears and makes experienced soldiers uneasy without knowing why, the kind that suggests someone else has already moved their pieces. She felt it before anyone said a word. In the operations center, the screens glowed with satellite feeds and tracking overlays. Blue icons crept forward along a route that had been approved, blessed by doctrine, reinforced by confidence. The men on those icons trusted the plan because it looked clean, because it matched every simulation they'd ever run. She stood behind the glass of her office, arms folded, eyes fixed on the same valley she had tried to warn them about. That ridge line shouldn't be empty, she thought. Her jaw tightened. She leaned closer to the screen, zoomed in, adjusted contrast. The terrain looked unchanged. That was the problem. Valleys like that never stayed neutral. Someone always owned the high ground. Someone always watched. The radio crackled, casual voices, calm breathing, the sound of men doing exactly what they were trained to do. She closed her eyes for half a second. Don't go left, she thought. Please don't go left. They went left. The first burst of gunfire cut through the room like a blade. Contact, contact, taking fire from the west. The tone of the voice changed instantly. No panic yet, but strain, the kind that lived just under discipline. She was already moving before anyone called her name. Red indicators began to bloom across the tactical display, not scattered, not reactive, structured, interlocking. They were waiting, someone said quietly. The commander stepped forward, hands braced on the table. How? She knew the answer, she didn't say it. Because the valley taught patience. It punished assumptions, and it rewarded anyone who learned its habits long enough to stop guessing. The radio erupted again. Heavy weapons, multiple positions, RPGs. Her stomach dropped. That ridge wasn't just occupied, it was prepared. She felt the old sensation rise in her chest, the cold focus that came right before fear, before memory. She shoved it down and forced herself to breathe. The men down there were still alive. That mattered more than ghosts. Vehicle disabled, another voice reported. We're pinned. The commander barked orders, adjustments, air support shifting angles, the room filled with controlled chaos. She stepped closer to the main display. They're funneling them, she said quietly. No one heard her. Or maybe they didn't want to. She raised her voice, Sir. The commander turned, irritation flickering across his face. Now is not the. They're not trying to stop the convoy, she said. They're trying to shape it. That got his attention. She pointed at the screen. Those positions aren't random. They're guiding them into the center of the valley. Once they commit, there's no retreat route that isn't exposed. Silence followed, heavy, uncomfortable. You're saying this is a kill box, someone muttered. She nodded once. The radio screamed before anyone could argue. Extraction route compromised. SEAL team is cut off. The words hit the room like a detonation. 12 men, static crackling around their voices. No clean way in, no safe way out. The commander straightened slowly. His confidence didn't shatter, it eroded. Options, he said. Maps shifted. Routes were drawn, erased, redrawn again. Every solution fell apart under scrutiny. Too slow, too loud, too predictable. She watched them struggle, feeling the old ache rise behind her ribs. I've seen this moment before. She remembered standing in another operations center years earlier. Different faces, same urgency, same belief that there would be time to fix things once they went wrong. There never was. She stepped forward. I have one. Heads turned, skepticism, frustration, a few outright glares. You already had your say, someone snapped. She met his eyes calmly, and I was right. That earned her silence. She moved to the screen without waiting for permission. Her hand hovered over the terrain, tracing invisible lines only she could see. "They're using a three-layer ambush," she said. "Heavy weapons on the western ridge, mobile infantry controlling the approaches, command elements positioned to adapt once we react." "And how do you know that?" the commander asked. She hesitated, just long enough for memory to try to claw its way out. "Because it's the only way this valley works." She pointed to a narrow area at the northern edge. It barely registered on the map. "There's a canyon here, not marked on current charts. Rockslide buried it years ago, but erosion reopened it. It runs directly behind their forward elements." Someone laughed under their breath. "You're telling us there's a hidden canyon the enemy somehow missed." "No," she said. "I'm telling you they're counting on us ignoring it." The intelligence officer leaned forward, fingers flying across his keyboard. Satellite imagery shifted. Contrast changed. A faint line appeared. His eyes widened. "Sir, there is something here." The commander stared at the screen, then at her. "How do you know about this?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The radio crackled again. A familiar voice this time, steady, professional, strained. "Base, this is Viper 1. Enemy reinforcements inbound. We're running out of time." She stepped closer to the microphone. "Viper 1," she said, "I need you to trust me." A pause. "Who is this?" the voice asked. "Someone who knows that valley better than they do." Another pause, longer this time. "Go on." Her chest tightened. "When I give the word, you'll move west 200 meters. There's a canyon entrance you won't see until you're on top of it. That's your exit." Silence. Then quietly, Roger standing by. She turned to the commander. "I need drone control, full authorization." He hesitated. Doctrine screamed at him, so did fear. Then he nodded. "Granted." She took the seat like she'd never left it. The controls lit up, feeds layered over one another, thermal, optical, infrared. Her hands moved without hesitation. "Target 1," she said. "Command post Northern Ridge." "That's just rock," someone protested. "Look again." The drone feed adjusted. Heat signatures bloomed, electronics, bodies clustered too tightly to be coincidence. Missile away. The explosion tore the spine out of the ridge. Secondary detonations followed, ammunition cooking off, confusion spilling into enemy channels. She didn't pause. "Target 2, heavy machine gun nest." "How can you possibly?" "I've walked that ridge," she said quietly. "Missile." Silence. Radio chatter erupted in a language half the room didn't understand, but panic translated easily. She marked targets with surgical restraint, not everything, only what mattered. Leadership coordination, eyes. The battlefield began to unravel. "Viper 1," she said into the radio, "move now." Gunfire surged. The SEALs broke cover, moving exactly where she'd told them. The canyon swallowed them whole. Cheers started to rise in the room. She didn't join them. Her eyes were fixed on the far edge of the map, where new red markers had just appeared. Too many. Too fast. Her breath caught. "They're not done," she whispered. And somewhere deep inside, the valley remembered her. What do you do when victory shows up wearing the face of a lie? For half a heartbeat, the room believed it was over. Blue icons moved. The canyon swallowed the SEALs just as she had promised. Enemy fire faltered. Voices on the radio steadied, breath by breath, discipline reasserting itself. Someone let out a quiet laugh of relief. She didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the far side of the display, where new red markers continued to appear, not rushing, not scattered but deliberate, patient, the way predators moved when they knew their prey was tired. They're reinforcing, the intelligence officer said, disbelief creeping into his voice. That's a full battalion. The commander's jaw tightened. From where? She already knew the answer. From villages we labeled non-combatant, she said softly. They were never empty, just dormant. The room shifted again. Relief drained away, replaced by something heavier. The kind of dread that came when you realized the enemy hadn't reacted to your plan, they had anticipated it. The radio crackled. Base, this is Viper 1. We're moving, but they're regrouping fast. They're not chasing us, they're circling. Her throat tightened. That was the Valley's final lesson. It didn't rush. It waited until you thought you were safe. She leaned closer to the mic. Keep moving. Do not stop for wounded unless I tell you. The silence on the other end lasted a fraction too long. Say again, the voice said. She swallowed. If you stop, they close the ring. A pause, pain carried in the quiet. Roger, Viper 1 said, we'll carry them. She closed her eyes for half a second. Proud, ashamed, both at once. The commander turned to her. We don't have enough assets to cover this many enemy positions. No, she agreed, we never did. He searched her face. Then what aren't you telling me? The question struck deeper than he knew. She straightened, shoulders squaring, not with defiance but with resignation. There's a reason they're moving like this, she said. They think they know who's guiding us. Someone scoffed. They don't even know your name. They know my habits, she replied. The room went quiet. Years ago she had walked that valley under a different call sign, different patch, different mission. She had survived long enough to learn how the enemy learned, how they studied, how they remembered. And she had left scars. Sir, the intelligence officer interrupted. We're picking up encrypted enemy traffic. They're calling this a cleansing operation. Her chest tightened. They're trying to erase something, she said, or someone. The commander's voice dropped. You. She nodded once. They believe if they break this engagement decisively, I'll surface. They want proof the ghost still exists. And if you do, he asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she zoomed the map outward, beyond the immediate fight, beyond extraction routes, to something older, something buried. There's a secondary position, she said. High ground overlooking the southern approach. If I take control of that, I can fracture their movement. Take control how? Someone asked. She exhaled slowly, personally. The room erupted. That's insane. Your staff, you're not. I'm qualified, she cut in. The commander stared at her, searching for the line between confidence and recklessness. You'd be exposed. She met his eyes. I already am. The radio crackled again. Base, we've got wounded piling up. Ammo's running low. That decided it. The commander nodded sharply. Prepare insertion. She felt the weight settle onto her shoulders. Not fear, but responsibility. The kind that didn't ask permission. As she geared up, muscle memory took over. Each strap tightened. Each click grounded her further in the present. A young lieutenant watched her from across the room. Ma'am, are you scared? She paused, considering the question honestly. Yes, she said, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. The helicopter ride was short, violent, wind and noise and the familiar rattle that made thoughts sharpen instead of scatter. As they approached the ridge, she felt it, the old alignment, heartbeat syncing with terrain, breath matching motion. Boots hit dirt. The valley greeted her like an old enemy. She moved fast, low, silent, no heroics, no wasted motion, just survival layered over intention. The ridge looked exactly the way memory had preserved it. The same crooked rock, the same shallow depression where someone could lie unseen for hours. She took position and settled in. Below, the battalion moved like a wounded animal, angry, disorganized, dangerous. She keyed her mic. Base, I'm in position. A beat. Understood, the commander replied. His voice was steady, but she heard the strain beneath it. She scanned through her scope, identifying leaders by posture, by how others deferred to them. She didn't feel triumph, only gravity. The first shot wasn't loud, it wasn't cinematic. It was necessary. The leader fell. Confusion rippled outward, orders fractured, momentum bled away. She moved methodically, not killing indiscriminately, removing coherence. The radio filled with new voices, enemy units arguing, repositioning, guessing. The SEALs pushed through the gap. "Viper 1, you're clear," she said. Cheers crackled back. Her chest tightened again, because she knew the valley wasn't finished. A shadow moved in her peripheral vision. Too close. She rolled as the shot came, dirt exploding where her head had been. Another sniper. Just as patient, just as trained. She breathed out slowly. So they remembered. She smiled faintly, not with joy but with acceptance. "Let's finish this," she whispered. And for the first time since she'd returned, the valley listened. Why does the moment you've prepared for your entire life still arrive uninvited? The second sniper was good. That was the first thing she registered, not fear, not anger, but respect. The shot had been timed perfectly, placed where hesitation would have killed her. Whoever it was knew the ridge, knew how long it took a body to relax after firing, knew when confidence turned into exposure. She stayed still. Not frozen, disciplined. Her cheek pressed into the dirt, breath slowed until it barely moved the grass in front of her scope. The valley hummed faintly below, distant shouts, sporadic gunfire, the sound of a battalion trying to remember how to function without leaders. She didn't look for the sniper. She let the sniper look for her. Seconds stretched, then minutes. Patience was a weapon here, always had been. She shifted her focus outward instead, listening, not just with her ears but with memory, wind direction, heat shimmer, the way dust settled differently where someone disturbed the ground recently. There, a slight inconsistency near a rock outcropping, too deliberate to be natural, too clean. She adjusted her scope by a fraction. The sniper wasn't where she expected. That meant they were better than average. A voice crackled in her ear, bass to Shadow status. She didn't answer immediately. "Shadow," the commander pressed, "talk to me." "I'm not alone up here," she said calmly. Silence on the line, then understood. She shifted her weight slowly, inch by inch, allowing her silhouette to appear just enough to invite curiosity. The bait. The shot came a second later. She fired where the sound had been, not where logic suggested. The return was immediate, final. She exhaled long and slow, tension draining from muscles she hadn't realized were locked. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes. Not in relief. In acknowledgement. She keyed the mic, threat neutralized. A murmur of relief rippled through the operations channel. Below, the battalion's cohesion continued to crumble. Without overwatch, without command, they moved in fragments, dangerous still, but no longer decisive. "Viper 1," she said, "push now, this is your window." "Copy," came the reply, strained but alive. "We're moving." She watched them advance through the scope. 12 men, exhausted, carrying wounded, refusing to leave anyone behind. She felt something tighten behind her sternum. Pride, maybe. Or guilt. The radio chatter spiked as extraction birds moved in. The valley responded with desperate resistance, sporadic fire, uncoordinated charges, anger without direction. She did what she could from the ridge, not spectacular shots, necessary ones, the kind no one applauded because no one noticed. Time blurred. By the time the helicopters lifted off, the valley had gone quiet again, not the wrong kind this time, the kind that followed survival. She stayed on the ridge long after command told her to exfil. Shadow, the commander said gently, it's over. She looked down at the empty ground where enemy fighters had scattered, where her past had once ended. Not for me, she replied. He didn't push. She moved carefully back toward the insertion point, body heavy now that adrenaline had loosened its grip. Each step carried weight, physical and otherwise. When she finally climbed into the helicopter, the noise hit her all at once. Rotors, wind, voices layered over one another. A corpsman glanced up from tending a wounded SEAL. "Ma'am," he said, nodding with quiet respect. She nodded back, nothing more. As the aircraft lifted, the valley shrank beneath them. Just rock and shadow again. No markers, no ghosts. Her hands began to shake. She curled them into fists, pressing them against her thighs until the tremor eased. Across from her, one of the SEALs caught her eye. His face was smeared with dirt and blood, some his, some not. "Hey," he said over the noise, "you the one who got us out." She hesitated, then shook her head. "You got yourselves out." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." The helicopter banked toward base. Only then did the exhaustion hit. The debriefing room smelled like stale coffee and quiet awe. No one spoke as she entered, not out of fear, out of something closer to recalibration. The commander stood when she did. "Sit," he said softly. She remained standing. "I need to say this first," she said. Her voice surprised her by not breaking. "Everything I did today was based on experience I wasn't supposed to survive." The room stilled. "I wasn't braver than anyone else," she continued. "I wasn't smarter, I was just left." No one interrupted. "I ran once," she said. "Not physically, mentally. I buried what that valley taught me because it hurt too much to carry." She looked at the commander. "Today I picked it up again, not for redemption, for responsibility." He held her gaze, something like respect settling into his expression. "You saved 12 lives," he said. She shook her head. "They saved each other, I just remembered." A long silence followed. Finally the commander spoke. "Your file, the one that says KIA, that was your call, wasn't it?" "Yes." "Why come back now?" She thought of the ridge, the sniper, the valley's patience. "Because forgetting almost killed them," she said. He nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad you remembered." Later, alone in her quarters, she sat on the edge of the bed and removed her boots. Her hands moved slower now, stiffness settling into joints that had carried too much weight for too long. She stared at the wall, at nothing in particular. The faces came uninvited, the 7 who hadn't made it out years ago, the ones whose names still echoed in her head during quiet moments. "I didn't leave you behind this time," she whispered. The room didn't answer, but she felt something ease. Not forgiveness. Acceptance. The next morning, the base moved differently. People nodded as she passed, some smiled, some didn't know what to say. She didn't need them to. The commander called her into his office just before noon. "We're recommending you take lead on a new unit," he said. "Special Operations Advisory, your experience." She held up a hand. "I don't want command for authority." He considered that. "What do you want it for?" "To make sure we listen," she said, "before valleys teach us again." He smiled faintly. "I think you've earned that." As she left the office, sunlight spilled across the corridor. Warm, ordinary, almost unfamiliar after the cold precision of the ridge. She paused, breathing it in. The valley was behind her now. But its lesson stayed. Strength didn't always announce itself. Sometimes it waited. And when it finally moved, it moved with purpose. Why does peace feel heavier than war when you finally step into it? The quiet after the mission wasn't silence. It was space. Space where adrenaline no longer filled the cracks. space where memory could stretch its legs and remind her it had never left. The base looked the same the next morning, concrete warmed by sun, boots striking pavement, radios murmuring half-heard conversations, but something subtle had shifted. People paused when she passed, not because of rank, because of recalibration, as if they were still adjusting the shape of their assumptions. She didn't like it. Attention had weight, and she had spent years learning how to move without being noticed. She took her coffee black and stood near the edge of the flight line, watching a helicopter lift off. The downdraft kicked dust into the air, stinging her eyes. She didn't blink. The burn grounded her in a way comfort never did. "You always stand here after missions." The voice came from her left, calm, curious, not intrusive. She turned to see one of the SEALs she'd helped extract, the one who'd asked if she was the reason they were alive. His arm was in a sling now, bruising yellowing along his jaw. "Sometimes," she said. He nodded, accepting that as complete. They stood together for a moment, watching the aircraft disappear into the haze. "I keep replaying it," he said finally. "The canyon, the timing, the way it all fell apart and then didn't." She said nothing. "I thought I knew what courage looked like," he continued. "Turns out I didn't." She glanced at him. "Courage isn't loud," she said. "It's inconvenient." He smiled faintly at that, then winced as the movement tugged at his injuries. "Still," he said, "you could have stayed safe. You didn't." She shook her head. "Safe is relative." He studied her for a moment. "You lost people there before, didn't you?" The question wasn't sharp. It wasn't prying. It was spoken the way soldiers spoke when they already knew the answer. "Yes," she said. "How many?" She considered lying, then decided against it. "7. He exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry." She nodded once. "So am I." He hesitated. "If you ever need anything, we owe you." She met his gaze. "You don't owe me anything. Just remember next time someone speaks quietly in a loud room." He smiled, then turned and walked away. She stayed where she was, the sun climbing higher, warming the scars she rarely acknowledged. The invitation arrived that afternoon. A formal briefing, closed doors, high clearance. She almost declined. Old instincts whispered that stepping back into the light never ended well, that shadows existed for a reason, that ghosts survived by staying ghosts. But 12 men were alive because she had stepped forward. And that mattered. The room was smaller than she expected, fewer people, more gravity. The commander sat at the head of the table. 2 intelligence officers flanked him. A civilian analyst she didn't recognize took notes silently. He didn't waste time. "We've been tracking a pattern," he said. "Small operations, failed ambushes, units breaking contact faster than expected." She leaned back slightly. "They're adapting." "Yes," he agreed, "and they're adapting to you." She didn't flinch. "The battalion you fractured wasn't just muscle," he continued. "It was symbolic. The leader we believe was coordinating that region disappeared during the chaos." "Disappeared," she echoed. "Or went to ground," the intelligence officer added. "Either way, they believe he's repositioning." She felt the old tension coil again. Not fear, recognition. "Where?" she asked. The screen lit up with satellite imagery. A compound nestled against rugged terrain, familiar terrain. Her breath caught before she could stop it. "That's the same region," the commander said. "Different valley." Of course it was. "You want me to advise," she said. "We want you to lead," he replied. The words settled between them like a weight. "I don't build units," she said carefully. "I dismantle problems." "And this problem," he said, "is built around your absence." She studied the image, the patterns, the defenses that mirrored lessons learned from her. He had survived her once. That changed things. "Why me?" she asked, though she already knew. The commander leaned forward. Because you understand the cost of being wrong, and you don't confuse decisiveness with certainty. Silence followed. She thought of the 7 names etched into memory, of the SEALs limping off helicopters, of the sniper who'd almost ended her on that ridge. "I'll do it," she said, "on one condition." "Name it." "We do this clean. No spectacle, no body count for the sake of headlines." He nodded, agreed. And she added, "If I say stop, we stop." He met her gaze, understood. The unit came together quietly. No banners, no speeches, just people who had learned, sometimes painfully, that listening mattered. She didn't assert authority. She earned trust the only way she knew how: preparation, honesty, refusing to pretend certainty where there was none. They trained hard, not louder, smarter. She walked them through terrain not as maps but as stories, how valleys breathed, how enemies waited, how patience killed faster than aggression. At night she sat alone with her thoughts. The question that haunted her wasn't whether she could do this again. It was whether she should. She had spent years trying to be less visible, less responsible for outcomes she couldn't control, because leadership meant carrying consequences long after the gunfire faded. And she was tired. One evening, as she reviewed footage alone, the civilian analyst knocked softly and entered. "Do you ever regret coming back?" the woman asked. The question surprised her. She considered it carefully. "Yes," she said, "every day." The analyst nodded, unsurprised. "Then why stay?" She looked at the paused image on the screen, a compound, a shadow waiting to be confronted. "Because regret doesn't disappear when you run," she said. "It just gets quieter, and quieter isn't the same as gone." The analyst smiled faintly. "That's honest." She returned the smile. "It's all I have left." The night before deployment, she visited the memorial. 7 names carved into stone, weathered, permanent. She traced each letter with her fingertips, grounding herself in their reality. "I'm still learning," she whispered. "I don't know if that makes it better or worse." The wind stirred, carrying dust across the base. "I won't promise perfection," she continued, "just attention." She stepped back, shoulders heavy but steady. The past didn't ask for forgiveness. It asked for presence. As dawn broke, the unit assembled, quiet, focused, ready. She stood before them, not above, not apart. "This mission isn't about proving anything," she said. "Not strength, not intelligence, not redemption." They listened. "It's about restraint," she continued. "About knowing when not to act. About understanding that survival is a responsibility, not a reward." She paused, letting the words settle. "If at any point this turns into something else, if it becomes about ego or optics, we walk away." No one argued. She nodded once. "Let's go." As they moved out, she felt the familiar alignment return. Not excitement, not fear. Purpose. The valley ahead didn't know her yet. But it would. And this time, she intended to leave nothing unresolved. What do you carry into the final moment, when there's nothing left to prove? The aircraft cut through the night without ceremony. No music in her head this time. No swelling sense of destiny. Just the steady vibration beneath her boots and the quiet awareness of every breath she took. She watched the team through the dim cabin light. Faces calm, focused, not fearless, aware. That mattered more. This wasn't the kind of mission that ended in celebration. It was the kind that ended in understanding. The valley appeared beneath them like a scar in the earth. Different contours, same temperament, narrow approaches, deceptive calm, places where sound bent and intentions were tested. She felt it immediately. Not dread. Recognition. They inserted far from the compound, choosing patience over proximity. Each step forward was earned, not rushed. The ground crunched softly under boots, then softened, then betrayed them briefly before settling again. The valley tested weight, rhythm, awareness. She moved with the team, not ahead of it. That was deliberate. Leadership wasn't distance. It was presence. They halted just before dawn. The compound sat ahead, quiet, disciplined, waiting, too quiet. She studied it through her optics, heart steady, mind sharp. He was there. She didn't need confirmation to know. The man who had learned from her absence, who had adapted her lessons and worn them like armor, who believed the ghost would either return or be erased by the attempt. She keyed the mic softly. "We don't rush this." No one responded. They understood. They waited. Minutes stretched into something heavier. The valley breathed. Birds stirred. A guard shifted position at exactly the wrong time. She marked it. The operation unfolded with restraint that would never make headlines. No explosions. No chaos. Just quiet pressure applied in the right places. Communications severed. Escape routes denied, not violently but decisively. The compound realized it was surrounded only when it was too late to matter. Inside, resistance flared briefly, then dimmed. She moved through corridors that smelled of dust and oil and certainty that had lasted too long. Her pulse remained calm, not because she felt nothing, but because she felt everything at once and had learned how to carry it. They found him in a back room, older than she expected, calmer than he should have been. He looked at her and smiled faintly. "So the valley finally spoke," he said. She studied him for a moment, not with hatred, with clarity. "It always does," she replied. He tilted his head. "You should have stayed dead." "Then you should have listened," she said. There was no monologue, no confession, no satisfaction in his eyes when he realized it was over, just the quiet resignation of someone who understood the rules too late. They took him without spectacle. Outside, the sun had risen fully now, painting the valley in soft light that almost felt kind. Almost. As the team prepared to exfil, she paused at the edge of the terrain and looked back one last time. She wasn't searching for ghosts. She was releasing them. The flight home was quieter than the one in, not because of exhaustion, but because something had settled. Across from her, one of the newer operators watched her with open curiosity. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "can I ask you something?" She nodded. "How do you know when it's time to stop?" The question lingered. She considered it, then answered honestly. "When the silence stops asking things of you." He frowned slightly, then nodded. He'd understand later. They landed without fanfare. No cameras, no speeches, just paperwork and routine and the gentle return of ordinary sounds. She submitted her report and declined the debrief celebration. No one argued. That night, she returned to the memorial. 7 names, still there, still heavy. She stood before them, hands at her sides, breathing evenly. "I didn't fix it," she said quietly, "but I didn't run." The words felt sufficient. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like the valley was watching her anymore. Weeks passed. The base moved on, as it always did. Missions replaced missions. Stories faded into classified files and half-remembered conversations. She stayed. Not because she was needed. Because she wanted to teach. She found herself in briefing rooms again, this time listening more than speaking, watching young officers explain plans with confidence she recognized. When something felt wrong, she didn't interrupt immediately. She waited. Then she asked a question. Not to challenge, to invite thought. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes they didn't. But occasionally someone paused, reconsidered, adjusted. And that was enough. One afternoon, the commander stopped her in the corridor. "We're formalizing your role," he said. "Advisory, permanent." She considered the offer. "I won't always be agreeable," she said. He smiled. "We're counting on that." She nodded. Later, alone in her quarters, she packed away the last of the gear she no longer needed. The rifle case closed with a soft click. The sound didn't sting this time. She sat on the edge of the bed and let herself be still. No mission ahead. No valley calling. Just breath, memory, and something that felt dangerously like peace. On her final evening at the base, she walked the perimeter alone. The sky deepened into indigo, stars emerging one by one. The world felt vast again, not hostile, not demanding. Just present. She thought of the commander who had doubted her, the SEALs who had trusted her voice, the sniper who had nearly ended her, the man who had learned her lessons too well. She thought of the woman she had been when she first entered that valley years ago, confident, untested, unaware of how much weight survival could add to a life. And she thought of who she was now. Not erased, not redeemed, integrated. She stopped, closed her eyes, and breathed deeply. Strength, she realized, wasn't about domination or defiance. It was about restraint, about listening longer than comfort allowed, about acting when silence had said enough. She turned back toward the lights of the base, footsteps steady. The valley would go on teaching others. She didn't need to follow, because some lessons, once learned honestly, don't ask to be repeated. And sometimes, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.